Would you give these guys some love up here? We just love our students, our parents. Thank you so much for committing to have your children in the house of God so that we can help you and partner with you in making disciples of the next generation. How about the gospel? You ready? 1 John chapter 3, beginning at verse 1, says, "See what kind of love the Father has given to us, that we should be called children of God, and so we are. The reason why the world does not know us is that it did not know him. Beloved, we are God's children now, and what we will be has not yet appeared. But we know that when he appears, we shall be like him, because we shall see him as he is. And everyone who thus hopes in him purifies himself as he is pure. Everyone who makes a practice of sinning also practices lawlessness. Sin is lawlessness. You know that he appeared in order to take away sins, and in him there is no sin. No one who abides in him keeps on sinning. No one who keeps on sinning has either seen him or knows him. Little children, let no one deceive you. Whoever practices righteousness is righteous, as he is righteous. Whoever makes a practice of sinning is of the devil. For the devil has been sinning from the beginning. The reason the Son of God appeared was to destroy the works of the devil. No one born of God makes a practice of sinning, for God's seed abides in him, and he cannot keep on sinning because he has been born of God. By this it is evident who are the children of God and who are the children of the devil. Whoever does not practice righteousness is not of God, nor is the one who does not love his brother." So big picture question, why did Jesus appear? Big picture answer, Jesus appeared to destroy the works of the devil. The reason why Jesus came was to destroy the works of the devil. Does anybody out there like baseball? Any baseball fans? Up front, out back, any baseball fans? Okay, let's go way back. There was this big game called the World Series years ago. And the very first game of the World Series years ago between the LA Dodgers and the Oakland A's, the Dodgers were down 4-3. It's the bottom of the ninth inning. There are 2 outs. There's 1 guy on second. The Dodgers are out of tricks. They have nothing else to do. Their star player actually did not play that game because his knee was hurt and his hip was hurt. So he didn't get to play. They were doing the best they could. They had no one else to bring out. They're down by 1, bottom of the ninth, 2 outs. Nothing good can happen here. And then, emerging out of the dugout, is their number 1 player, Kirk Gibson, comes out of the dugout and the crowd just explodes. He appeared for the purpose of winning the game. So he goes up to the plate, waits for the pitch, fouls a few off, takes a few strikes, full count. For those of you that know about baseball, that means he had 3 balls, 1 more he walks, he had 2 strikes, 1 more he's out. That's a full count. Full count. Sitting there waiting on the pitch. Pitch comes, hits the ball, terrible swing. Go back and Google it. Awful swing. But connects just right. Fair ball over the right field wall. Dodgers win. Everybody goes crazy. Dodgers win. Dodgers win. You never know what's going to be said up here. Anyhow, Dodgers win. What happens? He appeared for the purpose of winning the game. And what did he do? Won the game. Why did Jesus appear? Jesus appeared to destroy the works of the devil. And we see this throughout the ministry of Jesus. There was a lady who showed up on the Sabbath into the temple. People were there to worship God. She was bent over. She had been bent over for 18 years. Not 18 months, not 18 days, not 18 hours. If I have a sniffle for 18 minutes, I'm complaining to God. She had an issue for 18 years. She's bent over. That means for her to see who was in front of her, she had to take this really just uncomfortable look up. 18 years. And Jesus just walks up to her. He appears to her. And he lays his hands on her and he heals her in a moment. The reason the Son of God appeared was to destroy the works of the devil. And the religious people in the room, they complained. They said, you're not allowed to do that on the Sabbath. And he says, what are you talking about? Should this daughter of Abraham, whom Satan has bound for 18 years, should she not be loosed on the Lord's day? We see another moment where Jesus is there. He appears in a city. A desperate dad brings his son to people who pray for his son, and nothing happens. His son was having seizures. He would fall, he would hurt himself, he would even throw himself into the fire. And so he brings his son to Jesus. And Jesus reaches out and commands the demon to come out of him. Now, it was interesting that they thought it was just a medical condition of seizures. Let me just say, there are times when therapy won't do it because it's not something that can be talked out. There are times when there isn't medicine for it because it's not a physical condition, it is a spiritual condition. And when there is a spiritual condition, there is but only a spiritual remedy. And so Jesus commanded the demon to come out, and immediately the little boy was set free. Why? Because the reason the Son of God appeared was to destroy the works of the devil. There was another young man who was brought to Jesus. He could not speak and he could not hear. And Jesus commanded the devil to come out of him, and suddenly he could both speak and he could hear. Why? Because the reason that the Son of God was manifest, the reason he appeared, was to destroy the works of the devil. Acts chapter 10 and verse 38, it says, God anointed Jesus of Nazareth with the Holy Spirit and with power. He went about doing good and healing all who were oppressed by the devil, for God was with him. Why was God with him? Because in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was God. He was with God, and God was with him. And he went about doing good and healing all who were oppressed by the devil. Why? Because the reason the Son of God appeared was to destroy the works of the devil. But let's have an uncomfortable conversation, because why were the works of the devil here even in the first place? Like why is the devil, why is sin, why is evil, why is it something we even have to deal with? Why is it even here? So we have to go all the way back to the book of Genesis, where we see this moment where God creates things day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5, day 6. And at the end of the first 5 days, he said, it is good. It is good. It is good. When he made humans, male and female, he said, it is very good. So at the end of all of his creation, it was good. And then it said on the seventh day that God rested from creating. So now God has done the things that God is going to do, and now he invites us to do the things that we are called to do. He invites us to innovate and create and name animals and participate working the land. He calls us to get busy in the creation that he gave us to enjoy. He also called us to obey him. He gave us a command of things to do, and he gave us a command of one thing not to do. He said, do not eat of that tree. The presence of that tree. People are like, well, why was there even a tree to begin with? Because there had to be something that gave us choice. There had to be something where we had the freedom to choose God or to reject God. And that tree was simply the evidence of the freedom of mankind whom God had created and gave the freedom to. So he says, don't eat that, eat everything else. We had one job. We disobeyed God. When we disobeyed God, something horrible happened. We actually released on the earth the capacity of evil. Now, how did evil get here to be released? Well, we're told that in the beginning, God created the heavens and he created the earth. He created the heavens where he would dwell, and he gave angels positions in the heavens. And then he created the earth where we would dwell, and he gave us a position on the earth of having dominion or power over everything else that he created. So on the earth, we were the coolest thing here. What happened, though, is in the heavens, there was an angel who rebelled against God, and he convinced other angels to rebel against God. And at the conclusion of their rebellion, when Satan, the devil, tried to go higher than God, immediately he was cast to the earth. Now, what we have to understand that's sometimes frustrating, but at least it's a reality we have to embrace, is that we're told in the Psalms and we're told in Hebrews that we humans were made a little bit lower than the angels. Now, that's not that big of a deal, because as long as we're obedient to him, as long as we're in him, he is Lord or sovereign over everything. So anything is beneath us when we're in him. But here's the problem. When we disobeyed him, we then lost the capacity of our authority of being like the coolest thing on the earth, and we gave that to Satan. We gave that to the devil. He's then now called the God of this world. 2 Corinthians chapter 4 and verse 4 says, the God of this world has blinded the minds of the unbelievers. So we, because we listened to his temptation, we gave him power to function and move on the earth. And every single time he wants to do something bad, he does it through someone that listens to him. We see this in John chapter 8 and verse 44. It says, you are of your father, the devil, for it is your will to do the desires of your father. When I desire to do what is evil, then I desire to do what is the will of the devil. And so when I do the will of the devil, now evil happens on the earth. We ask this profound question and we act like there's not an answer, but of course there's an answer. There's just not an answer we like. Why do bad things happen to good people? Bad things happen to good people because people do bad things to good people. That's why. And when we do evil against someone, something bad happens to someone good. Why did it happen? Because we followed the will of the devil. And in doing that, did evil to someone that didn't deserve it. Is it right? No. Is it fair? No. And we look at this and we're like, well, then God created a mess. No, God didn't create a mess at all. He told us. He said, I'm giving you choice. I'm giving you dominion, but please understand, if you do not obey me in this one thing, you will die. He told us what the consequence would be. What does death mean? That means you lose your dominion, you lose your position, and you hand it to that which will make a mess. And when you do that, bad things happen to good people. Let me tell you a little story. How about y'all? Would you like to hear a story about a preacher doing a dumb thing when he was a kid? How about that? Okay. So, how many of you were here earlier? Oh, how about I tell you a different story then? You want a different story? Because I already told you that one. Let's hear a different story. Okay, do y'all like concerts? Okay, I'm in the 6th grade. I was at a concert at Walt Disney World called Night of Joy. There was a band called Stryper that was playing. Please Google them. Please Google them. Yellow and black stripes, crazy hair, awesome. Awesome, like an 80s band. And so I went to this concert, and everybody's on the line. They hadn't opened the gates yet to come in. It was general admission. Now, what general admission means is when they open that gate, whoever runs the fastest, whoever's the meanest and the rudest, you get a front row seat. That's how, nobody's going to give you your spot against the stage, so you have to fight for it. Like that's what you have to do. So they open the gate, we take off running, and the person in front of me falls down. They're on the ground in front of me. I can stop and help them, but I'd lose my spot. The only other option is just to step on them as I run by. I know, right? So I can either step on them or help them. Now, what would the devil do? What would Jesus do? What did I do? I stepped on him. For this reason, the Son of God appeared, was to destroy the works of the devil. In me, if I give him my life, if I give him my will, if I say, God, I'm going to do what you've called me to do, I'm not stepping on people. Let me just shout myself out. Like a few decades later, I was at another concert that I was really excited to be at. We were taking a group of people, and I had a really good seat, and then some people came in late, so they had a really bad seat. But one of the ones who was late, they should have had a really bad seat, they were in a wheelchair, so they couldn't get to their seat. So they were going to have to be in a terrible place and basically see nothing but hear it. And what I did Because now, remember why Jesus came? To destroy the works of the devil. In other words, he called me to be a decent human being. What I did was give him my ticket so he could sit in a great place and see a great show, and I sat against the wall of the arena like 18,000 seats away. But you know what? It was the best concert I ever went to. You know why? Because I had a seat that I had because I did a good thing. And God always rewards people who do good things. So you know what? Maybe I got it wrong when I was in the 6th grade. But when I was a grown old man, I got it right. Why? Because Jesus came, he appeared to destroy the works of the devil. And that means when he's in me, that gives me the power to do what is right instead of the thing that is wrong. And so evil exists because we chose to follow that which was wrong. And every time we follow something wrong, more evil multiplies. But there are 2.2 billion Christians on the earth who have the opportunity to live out the kingdom of God on the earth and make the world a better place. And when we believe that Jesus appeared to destroy the works of the devil, then we believe that we have the opportunity to destroy those works in us as well. So, John 10:10, the thief came only to steal and kill and destroy. But Jesus came that we may have life and have it abundantly. All right, so now what I'm gonna do is, I'm gonna kind of focus on a chit chat with your parents. Remember my notebook? All right, so my notebook has cool stuff. There's a sermon in there. No, I'm not even gonna show you another sermon. I'm not gonna show you. That was a prophecy that I drew a picture of. I thought that was pretty cool. That was my practice note. I'm not gonna let you see that. No, I'll let you see it later. I know. All right, what else do we have in here? The Joy Center, remember the Joy Center? We have that in here, it's somewhere in the back. Your parents don't get to see that until October, but if you didn't catch it earlier today, that's just a quick little sketch that your parents will get to see in October. Here, I like this guy. You wanna jump in? There you go. That's my chicken scratch. Okay. All right, so what we did in the old days, that's my wife's kitchen. She wanted me to do some kitchen work, so I had to draw that out before I did it. Any of you kids have your dad do a bunch of work because your mom makes him? Pray for your dad. I just want a little shout out to dads. Pray for your dad. Okay, so here is what we used to do, before there were cell phones and the ability to text friends or email them. When you're in class, you had to write a note. But sometimes you wrote things on that note that you didn't want anybody else to see but your friend. So you'd write it and you'd tear it out, and then you would take it and you would do this secret folding trick. Y'all remember the secret folding trick? I wasn't talking to you this time. I was talking to all them. It's fine. It's a secret folding trick that your parents know. So you fold it once here, and then you fold it over there, and then you flip it over, and you fold it once here. For real, any of you out there remember the folding? Yeah, right? And then you folded it again, and then you folded it the last time, but the most important part of this entire fold was the tuck. You gotta do the tuck, because then it's just perfect. No one sees it. And you'd write for you only or something. And if you thought a girl was cute, you'd write it in there that you thought she was cute, but you hope nobody even saw the note. And then you walked past him and you gave it to him. All right, I have a note. Who wants my note? All right. All right, for the rest of us, let's jump into this. One of the things that he says here, once he establishes firmly that Jesus came to destroy the works of the devil, he says you have to find out what kind of love God has for you. There is a love that God has for everyone, and there is a love that God has specific for you. What does that mean? That means there are layers of grace upon grace. There is saving grace that is for all, but then there are graces where God, by his love, makes a promise to you personally, and it is through relationship that we're able to see the kind of love that God has for us. We, in our generation, in our culture, we don't get to define love. God has already defined love. The one who loved us first is the one who gets to determine and define that which love is. You see, this is what is fascinating about us today. We have grown into this level of arrogance where we have followed the gospel to a point and we've made the world a better place. And now that we've made the world a better place by following the gospel, we've decided that we get to decide now how to move forward. But we never made it here on our own. We only got here. We only knew what was good because God told us what was good. We only know how to love because God showed us how to love. God defines love. John 3:16, for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son, that whoever would believe in him would not perish but have everlasting life. In John chapter 15 and verse 13, no greater love has anyone than this, that a man lay down his life for his friends. Here's what we absolutely know. If you walk up to somebody and they have their kids and you say, I'm going to take one of your kids, unless you'll die for them. There's not a parent on the planet that won't step out in front and say, take me. Why? Because we love them so much. But if I'm walking down the street with a buddy and somebody comes up and says, I'm going to take him unless you want to die for him. Why? No greater love than this, than a man lay down his life for his friends. For God so loved the world. It's not about you dying for your children, but rather would you put your child forth to die for someone else? See, God gets to define what love is. When we define love, we make statements like if it's not hurting someone. But here's God's version of love. It's not just what will hurt somebody, what's hurting you. See, God wants to save you from hurting yourself. God wants to save you from experiencing what is bad. Why? Because for this reason, the Son of Man appeared to destroy the works of the devil. He appeared that we would have life and have it abundantly. I don't get to define what love is. We don't get to make statements like love wins. What kind of love? His love or your love? Because he determines what love is. 1 John chapter 4 and verse 19 says, we love because he first loved us. John chapter 15 and verse 16 says you didn't choose him, he chose you. I can only choose him because he chose me. Because God so loved the world, all of us, he chose us. Because he chose us, we have opportunity to experience him. This is the relationship between what is called grace and what is called faith. Faith is not a bunch of principles and rules and procedures that if we just see a few things that we like, we can do these principles and have them. That's not what faith is. Faith doesn't even exist in the absence of grace. Why? Because love comes first. God chooses first. So he chose to save humanity. He appeared to destroy the works of the devil. But then there are graces, there are layers of that love where he promised me something personal. Things he decided, I don't get to decide. J.B. Hugh, they so beautifully talked about 9 particular gifts of the Spirit in 1 Corinthians 12. There are others listed in Romans 12. I don't get to determine which gifts I have or which gifts I don't have. God determined that all by himself. What I get to do is experience the fruit of that grace by receiving it, by participating in it, by faith. Faith only works when you have ascertained what is the grace of God for you. I read John Wesley make a statement one time, and it gets quoted a lot. And it's right when it's right, but unfortunately it's wrong when it's wrong. He said, it seems like God can do nothing unless someone asks him. Well, I don't think that's true at all. I mean, who asked God to create the heavens and the earth? Who asked God to create the sun and the moon and the stars? Who asked God to make man? Who asked God to make woman? Who asked God to choose Abraham and call him a father of many nations? Who did? Nobody. God all by himself. When we sinned, when we blew up the whole mess, there isn't one record of mankind saying, hey God, we made a mistake. Can you send your son to save us? Nobody asked that. God all by himself, at the moment that we transgressed, he decided, I will redeem them. I will send my son through a virgin girl to give birth to my child who will live and fulfill the law, and he will die for them and save them. God made that decision all by himself. Why? Because he determines what love is. And so it is useful for us to have an understanding that God does have a will, that God does make decisions, that grace and love begins with him, and we only have the opportunity to follow it, and we follow that through a life of faith. That's why we walk by faith. That's why it's impossible to please God without faith. What is faith? It is that thing that we believe from the gospel and that work that we do in obedience to the gospel, but grace determined what it is we believe and what it is that we do, not us. Grace decides. And so here in this text, it says, see what kind of love the Father has for us. But here's what's also true. In James chapter 4 and verse 2, it says, you do not have because you do not ask. So it does seem like there are layers of things that we do not have because we have not asked. And so we do have to participate with him. We do have desires that are in our heart that he will answer, but this will all flow out of a relationship with him. And unless we're doing the thing that he has called us to do, we will ask. But James goes on and says, you ask, but you don't have, because you ask amiss, because you just want to spend it on your own passions. So how does that work? Here's how that works. By grace, he determines what I can have, what I should be doing. By faith, I experience that, I live in that, and then in living out of that flow of following God and living in his grace, I will have desires that flow from obedience, and those things that I ask for, desires that I ask for that are the result of me following him and the things he commanded, he'll give them to me. Because that's what he said he would do. He would give me the desires of my heart. But those desires flow from a faith that is following the grace of God. We don't get to just decide things. He decides. Let's look at it like this. Hebrews chapter 4 and verse 16 says, let us then with confidence, that means let us with faith, let us with confidence draw near to the throne of grace, that we may receive mercy and find grace to help in our time of need. Grace is something we find. It is something that we look for. Noah found grace. Moses found grace. David found grace. Mary found grace. We find it in our relationship with him. We are looking, we are asking. It says, see what kind of love the Father has for us. There is this moment recorded both in Mark and in Luke, where there was a lady who had been sick for 12 years. That's a long time. And during Jesus' ministry, we don't know exactly the timeline, probably somewhere between year 1 and 2, which means for 11 years, at least, she had a sickness that Jesus had not yet appeared to destroy. So she just dealt with it for that amount of time. But in the time that she dealt with it, it said that she was a servant of God. She feared the Lord. That means she was a student of the law and the prophets. That means that she was a worshiper of God. And apparently, she found the text in Malachi chapter 4 and verse 2, which says, for those who fear my name, the Son of Righteousness will rise with healing in its wings. Now, that word wings, kanaf, is the Hebrew, and not to be, nerdy in the middle of this, but it just means like the edge. So Like if you're a bird, it's your wings, or an angel, it's your wings. If it's a robe, it's the hem of the garment. If it's the sun, it's where the light penetrates and ends. So the sun, the end, the wing of the sun is when the sun hits your face. The wing of a robe is the hem. The wing of a bird is the edge. Like that's what the word means. It can be applied in multiple places. And so it says the Son of Righteousness will rise with healing in its wings. There was something about that text in her relationship with God that she knew. It says in Mark chapter 5 verse 28, she knew if she just touched the hem of his garment, she would be healed. How did she know? Because there was a promise in the gospel where she had found that woke up faith in her heart. Why? Because there was a grace in that text for her. And sometimes we just find blind promises and we're like, oh, God promised blessing, so he promised to bless me. When did he promise to bless you? Specifically, what did you find in the word where the blessing of God was promised you, where it woke up faith in your heart? I don't mean it woke up a desire of your flesh. Could you spend all your time scrolling, look at a bunch of consumer nonsense that you wanted, and suddenly one simple little meme about a promise of God, and you're like, oh, God promised me that house, did he? Did he promise you that house? Where did the desire, where was it awakened from the word? Or was it awakened by the flesh? Where was the promise made to you? Where did it become personal? See, that text became personal to her. She was sick for years, and she knew at the appearing, when the Son of Righteousness, when she saw him rise, when the Son of Righteousness rises with healing, she knew if she just heard about Jesus. But for 11 years, she waited. But when she heard the reports of Jesus, she knew he's the one. And what did that mean? That meant all she had to do was touch the hem of his garment. Not bump in and touch his garment. It's kind of funny that he made it so complicated for someone. We get lazy sometimes in our faith. It didn't just say touch the garment. It was the wing, the hem of his garment. That means you've got to go find Jesus, and you're not even allowed to be in the crowd, by the way, because you're sick, and sick people with the disease she had weren't allowed to be around other people. So she's risking a whole lot even to be in the middle of people. But now she can't just casually kind of walk by and sneak in a little grab of the elbow of the robe. No, she had to inconvenience everybody, drop to her knees, and grab the hem of his garment. But as soon as she did, the Son of God appeared to destroy the works of the devil. And immediately she was made whole. Why? Because God made her a promise. He said, if you fear me, the Son of Righteousness will rise with healing in his wings. And she reached down to the hem of his garment, the wing where the healing was. And she grabbed a hold of it. Why? Because the gospel promised her. And she held on to the promise. See, when we believe God, when we believe him, life gets better. But here's probably the most complicated part about this entire text to me, is it says he appeared and I'm a child of God. But then when he appears, I will be like him. Now, when I read the commands of the gospel, I'm actually commanded to be like him now. Even in this text is the command to be pure as he is pure. That's like him. To pursue righteousness and do righteous as he is righteous. That's like him. So I'm already doing these things. But it says, but when he appears, I will be like him. And so sometimes we can look at this text in sort of an immature way or even a lazy way, and we will use it to make statements like this. He will come one day, and when he does, because I prayed a prayer, then I will suddenly be in his presence, and then I will be like him, which means I don't have to be like him today. So I can pray something, and rather than pursuing righteousness, I can continue to pursue lawlessness because Jesus already paid it all. We will build theologies and doctrines of destruction, because what that will encourage me to do is live a lifestyle that leads me to hell rather than a lifestyle that leads me to be glorified like Him. So when I look at this text, I have to understand, what does it mean when He comes, I will be like Him? In what way will I be like Him when He comes? In a way that I cannot be like Him now in His absence. And what that means is there is a day coming when He comes when my body will be glorified, because my body can't be glorified now. Why? Because I live in the flesh and the flesh is bound to the earth. But a day is coming when He appears when I will be like Him. So in the flesh, I have to choose to follow the Spirit. In the flesh, I have to choose to say no to my flesh and not sin, but rather pursue righteousness. See, there is a moment when He comes and I'll get everything that I desire. I'll experience every single promise. In 2 Corinthians chapter 15 and verse 53, it says, "This perishable body shall put on the imperishable, and this mortal body shall be immortal." So a day is coming when what is perishable will put on what is imperishable. But right now, I live in a perishable body. What that means is, if I run too long, I will have fatigue. I will be tired. I will pass out. I will cry out for somebody to bring me water and take me home. If somebody punches me in the face, it will hurt. Gals, when you have babies, it is painful. I hear. It looks very painful. Why? Because we live in the flesh. And the flesh is subject to the flesh. And there are laws that exist on the earth that will not change until what is perishable puts on what is imperishable. See, like even when God comes and He heals somebody in a moment here, or by a movement of the Spirit of God, there's a gift of healing and someone receives healing. Even when that happens, what it does not do is remove the reality that this body actually perishes, and there's a day that this body still will perish. So even if healing comes and I get added 40 years or 50 years, there's still an end. Why is there an end? Because I am perishable. The body perishes. But a day will come when the imperishable is put over what is perishable. The immortal takes over what is mortal. And so that is the day that I'm looking forward to. That is the day that I'm longing for. And so I keep in my mind not what is in the moment or what I want right now, but I'm living for eternity. I'm living for the moment when Jesus comes back. So I'm making sure that I'm being true to the command that He's given me today, that puts me in a position to experience every promise that He says will happen, while realizing the promise that will happen later may not be the thing that I experience today. But when I spend time with Him, I do see what He has for me today. I know what He has for me right now. See, we see this in Romans chapter 8 and verse 16. It says, "The Spirit Himself bears witness with our spirit that we are children of God. And if children, then heirs, heirs of God, and fellow heirs with Jesus, provided that we suffer with Him in order that we may also be glorified with Him." What is that glory? That is the glorification of the body. That is the mortal putting on immortality. That is the perishable putting on the imperishable. But what do I have to do in order to be glorified with Him? I have to suffer with Him. What is this suffering? It is saying no to the flesh. I get so tired of all of us acting like we have something. Well, you don't know how it is for me. We all deal with the flesh. Every single one of us. We don't deal with the same temptations, but we all deal with temptation. Every single one of us has to say no to the devil. All of us. Well, you don't know. It's just harder for me. Nonsense. Shut your mouth. It's not harder for you. It's hard for all of us. Every single one of us, we all have to say no. Well, I do know. I do know. We all know. Every single one of us. And so the command, there's not exclusions. It's inclusive. What is the inclusion? that we must all suffer with him in order for us to all be glorified with him. And then Paul goes on and he says, for I consider that this present suffering pales to be compared to the glory that will be revealed to us. For the creation waits with eager longing for the revelation of the sons of God. Wait a minute, I thought I already was a child of God. Yeah, but there's the child of God because he appeared, who's now called to suffer with him that he would be glorified. And there are some people who they say a good prayer here, but they don't make it past this moment. We have parables that Jesus talked and said, the cares of this world showed up and stole the word from them, and they what? They fell away. They fell away. So it's not just starting well, it's finishing well. And the thing is, what that means is I have a commitment to suffer as he suffered. That's not pointless suffering. It's not just living a life of misery. He said, no, I came that you would have a life and have it abundantly. What it means is there are things that he said no to that I have to say no to. There are things that he didn't do that I don't get to do. There are things that he did that I'm called to do. I don't like to forgive people. There are people who get on my nerves. I just as soon punch them in the nose as look at them. Just obnoxious, loudmouth people. Forgive them, for they know not what they do. What is that? What is that? That is destroying the works of the devil. And he came to destroy the works, which means he's called us to live a way that is not adding to the problem, but rather we're infusing life with the answer. Because here's the deal. He is coming back. What he promised us was, he who began a good work in you, he will bring it to completion. So the one who died for you so that the Spirit of God could indwell you is the same one who after your season of suffering will come and glorify your body. And when the body is glorified, whatever you dealt with in the flesh means nothing because you're staring at the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords face to face, and your reward is in front of you. And so here's what he said in Revelation chapter 22 and verse 12. He said, behold, I am coming soon. So if he's coming, I'm living for him. If he's coming, I'm being obedient to him. I'm not sowing to the flesh. I'm not living in lawlessness. I don't keep on sinning. Why? Because he's coming. And if I know he's coming, then I'm living a life that is prepared for his coming. Because he said, I'm coming soon, and my reward is with me to repay each one for what he has done. I don't want to get distracted from serving him on this earth because maybe I didn't get something that I wanted. I don't want to be distracted from following God on this earth because I've blamed him for something that he didn't do, or I'm mad at him for something that I said you should have done that he said I never promised to do. There are a lot of times we take these texts to mean that we're just going to live life in such an amazing, perfect way that we never feel pain. But that promise doesn't happen until the end. It's at the end. That's not a promise today. Revelation 21:4 says God will wipe away every tear. What does that mean? That means there are tears on the earth, and he's going to wipe them away. And death shall be no more. What does that mean? There's death on the earth. And grieving shall be no more. What does that mean? It means we lose people on the earth and we hurt. And pain shall be no more. What does that mean? There's no more sickness. There's no more disease. He said, for the former things have passed away. And the one who is seated on the throne says, behold, I am making all things new. And then in verse 6, he says this, it is done. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. So when he appeared the first time, he died for our sins and he said, it is finished. I am the Alpha. And then at the end, he says, it is done. When there is no death, there is no pain, there is no grieving, there are no tears, there is no crying. He says, it is done. Why? Because I'm the beginning and I'm the end. If I promised you then, I'll bring it to completion now. And when we stand on the promise that he made us in the season when he made it, I promise you, here's what will be your reality. You will understand that for this reason, the Son of God appeared to destroy the works of the devil. Amen.